A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and listen to some music at least once every week. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. It is impossible to conceive of this immense and wonderful universe as the result of blind chance or necessity. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they were inside us. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Even people who aren't geniuses can outthink the rest of mankind if they develop certain thinking habits. How paramount the future is to the present when one is surrounded by children. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts which in us would be called moral. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability. The world will not be inherited by the strongest, it will be inherited by those most able to change. It is not the biggest, the brightest, or the best that will survive, but those who adapt the quickest. This preservation of favorable variations and the rejection of injurious variations, I call natural selection or the survival of the fittest. In the long history of humankind, and animal kind, too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. One general law, leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and weakest die. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. On the ordinary view of each species having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. Such simple instincts as bees making a beehive could be sufficient to overthrow my whole theory. Everything in nature is the result of fixed laws. Nothing exists for itself alone, but only in relation to other forms of life. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. What a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Animals, whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider our equal. The more one thinks, the more one feels the hopeless immensity of man's ignorance. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. The young and the old of widely different races, both with man and animals, express the same state of mind by the same movements. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare, and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I, for one, must be content to remain an agnostic. The survival of preservation of certain favored words in the struggle for existence is natural selection.